G'day so-and-sos and welcome to my sewing room. If we haven't met before, my name is Kathy and I'm stoked to have you here because I have a great project for us to do today. This bag is so much fun and so quick to do. So if you're a beginner bag maker or a beginner sewer really, this would be a good project. It's pretty simple. But it does incorporate some skills that you might not have done before, like putting in a zipper. So if you haven't done that, don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do it. You'll be fine. So if you're a more experienced bag maker or sewer, then you are going to whip this up like that and you're going to love it. They're great for markets, for giving out at Christmas. I'm thinking I'm just going to whip up a couple more and give them out at Christmas time with some bottles or chocolates or something in there. Nice and easy. So it's got the zipper pocket on the front and then a nice big pouch pocket on the back, a slip pocket inside, and then we've got a magnetic clasp to hold it shut. So if you wanted to leave off anything, then knock yourself out. You know, if you don't feel like to doing the zipper, don't do the zipper, whatever, make it your own. Okay, are you ready? Because I'm ready. So let's get cracking. Let's have a look at what we need for today's project. So over here I have my acrylic rulers, rotary cutter, scissors and snippers, and a good cutting mat. Then I have some clips, some pins, a magnetic clasp, some zipper tape, good all-purpose thread, I always use Gutermann. And then I have a marking tool and a thin double-sided sticky tape, which is going to help me install this zipper. And then I have a bread plate. My plate is 7 3/4 inches in diameter. If you don't have something exactly that size, don't worry. Just use something close to that. It's just to round off our corners. And then over here I have my fabric. So my exterior is going to be this one, and it is a drill cotton, which means it's just a little bit thicker, a little bit of a denser weave, I guess. And with that, I'm going to be using a fusible fleece interfacing. And then I have a quilting cotton for my interior pieces. And with that, I'm going to be using a light interfacing. So just use what interfacing you have that's still got that flexibility, a little bit soft, because our bag is supposed to be slouchy. And if you don't have a drill cotton, that's fine. Use a quilting cotton. Just use what you have and what you like. Okay, so let's have a look at our measurements. Let's have a look at our fabric. So the good news is that most of our fabric is cut out exactly the same, and that will be 16 inches by 19 inches. So out of that measurement, we will need 2 of our exterior pieces and then 2 of our lining fabric as well, all cut out to that 16 by 19. And then we'll need 2 pieces of the light interfacing cut out in that same size, and then 2 pieces of our fusible fleece cut out in that same size. So that is all our exterior and main lining pieces. And then we have our pockets. So over here, I have what will be my slip pocket, and it is 6.5 by 12 inches. And I've cut out a piece of the light interfacing the same size. And then I have my zipper pocket piece. And my zipper pocket will be 10 inches by 13.5 inches. And I have light interfacing to go with that one. And then I have my piece of zipper tape, and it will be 7.5 inches. And I have a number 5 zipper head on that. So pretty easy. So go ahead and cut out all of your pieces and then iron on all your interfacing. And I will see you back here once we have all that done. So I have all my pieces interfaced and I've popped all of them to one side except for one of my exterior pieces. Now we're going to work on these one by one and we're going to do all of them exactly the same. So I'll just show you on one and then we'll go away and do the rest. So I'm going to have my piece orientated with the short ends at the top and bottom. and the longer sides sideways. I'm going to fold it in half, lining up my edges and bottom and top the best I can. Then I'm going to grab my iron and iron down this side. So it's a good time to make sure your interfacing is all on nicely as well. Okay, then I'm going to grab my plates. So this is my folded edge and this is my open side. I'm going to grab my plate and line it up so that it is just touching the side and the bottom. And I'm going to draw myself a curve, just like that. And then I'm going to grab my ruler and I'm going to measure a 4-inch square. So I'm 4 inches across and 4 inches down. And I'm going to give myself a little mark there at that corner. And then I'm going to draw a line from that corner to that point, just like that. Then I'm going to measure 1.5 inches along the bottom and 1.5 inches along the side. From that same point, measure down to each one of those marks. Pretty easy. And that is going to be our pleat. Then I'm going to measure up from the bottom of my fabric 11.5 inches and just give myself a line across. Just like that. So that's what we should look like so far. Now from this same side, the open side at the top, I'm going to measure in 2 inches and then draw a line down to that line. Grab my plate again and same thing. Just going to line it up so it just touches the side and the bottom and give myself a curve. Just like that. So that's what we should look like. Now, before I go ahead and cut this out, so I'm going to be cutting out this piece here and this bottom curve. But before I cut out this bottom curve, I want to recreate this pleat on the other side. So flip it over, making sure I'm still all lined up. Get my plate, just touching the side and the bottom. My 4-inch square, 4 inches by 4 inches. My dot, from my dot down to the corner. 1.5 inches in along the bottom and 1.5 inches along the side, and then do my lines. So then I have my pleat on both sides of my bag. If I went ahead and just cut it out, I wouldn't have the pleat on that side. Okay, and then I'm just going to cut this out. So cut along that bottom curve, just like that, and then cut this top piece out. And then we are going to do all of our pieces exactly the same. There we go. So when we open it up, there is our bag shape. So go ahead and do both exterior pieces and both lining pieces just like that. And I'll see you back here in a moment once we have all that done. There we go. There is all 4 of my pieces cut out, and I've made sure to draw the dart on each side as I've gone. Looking good. Okay, what we're going to do now is pop these to the side for a little moment and grab our slip pocket. So there's my slip pocket. Now I'm also going to grab 2 of the cutouts of the top of our bag. So I've got an exterior piece and an interior piece. Now these were the bits that were at the top next to our handle. We're going to make a pocket out of them. So what we're going to do is place these 2 pieces right sides together. So pretty side to pretty side. And clip these together. So I'm going to take that over to the sewing machine at the same time that I take my slip pocket and sew that together most of the way around, except I'm going to leave myself a turnout hole at the top. Oops. So I'm going to leave 1, 2, 3, 4, a 4-inch turnout hole there where I'm not going to sew. I'm going to leave that open. Then I've got my slip pocket. Now I'm going to fold my slip pocket in half and whack some clips around that. I was about to say it's the smaller piece. It's a smaller pocket. It's at 6.5 by 12 inch one. Same thing. I'm going to leave myself a turnout hole at the top of 3 inches for this one. So on this one, I'm just going to sew up the sides, in, up the side and in, leaving myself that turnout hole. So let's take these over to the machine and get these done. Okay, I'm going to start with my slip pocket. So I'm going to give myself a good 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I've shortened my stitch length to around a 3.5, and I'm going to backstitch. Now when I get up to this corner, instead of just leaving my needle in and pivoting, what I'm going to do is lift, pivot 45 and just drop 1 stitch in there, and then lift and then pivot the rest of the way around. Now doing that is going to give me a little bit better of a corner to push out. And then at the bottom, I'm going to backstitch. And then same thing on the other side. Going to make sure I backstitch up to this corner, lift, pivot 45, drop 1 stitch in there, lift, and then the rest of the way around. And there is the slip pocket done. Now I'm going to do this nice big curved pocket that we're going to have on our exterior piece. So again, starting where that turnout hole is, and I'm going to backstitch up to the corner. Now I'm going to do the same thing. Lift 45, drop 1 stitch in, lift, and around. Now I'm going from my lining side because I could see that when I interfaced, my lining fabric shrank a little bit more than my exterior, which happens depending on your interfacing and depending on your fabric. So I'm sewing from that side so that I don't accidentally miss, and I'm grabbing both sides. So same thing, lift 45, drop 1 stitch in, lift all the way around. and then backstitch. So there's our pockets, 2 of our pockets anyway, sewn together. So what I'm going to do now is just clip my corners on my slip pocket. And those bottom ones just a little bit, just to get some of that bulk out of the way. And then on this one, I'm just going to clip my curves. So I'm just going to snip in, being really careful not to go too close to those stitches, because I do not want to snip any of those, and snip my way around those curves on both sides. So this way, when we turn it out and iron it, it's going to sit a little bit better, and when it's not going to bulk up and bunch around those curves. So I've got my iron on and heating up as well. Okay, let's turn these out and have a look. So these top corners should sit really nicely with the way that we did that angled stitch. There we go. Just going to grab one of my purple things. There we go. That's that one. Now this one. Same thing, get my little purple thing and just pop out those corners. Now even just with that one angled stitch, my corners are just sitting a little bit nicer. They don't have the same sort of little bit of bulk that they would otherwise. Okay, ironing mat. And I'm just going to iron that nice and flat and iron that hole closed. And then I'm going to take these back over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch along this top edge where I've got that turnout hole, just to close up that top end and close that hole. Just like that. Now, especially on this big bit, I'm just going to whack some clips on there to hold it in place. Oh, hot. And on this one as well. And then we're going to go back over to the sewing machine, and we are going to top stitch along those open edges at about 1/8 of an inch. Since I'm top stitching, I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to about a 4.5, and I'm at around 1/8 of an inch. So I just want to back stitch just a little bit there, and then just sew that hole closed and backstitch. That's that one done. And then my nice big one. So same thing, I just want about 1/8 of an inch, and I'm just going to backstitch a little bit and then close that hole up. And I'm top stitching from the side that I want showing. So this will be the outside of my pocket. All the way to the end, backstitch a little bit. Done. So there's 2 of our pocket pieces done. Now we're going to pin these in place. So what I'm going to do is grab one of my exterior pieces first, pop my little slip pocket to the side, and I'm going to find my centers of this piece. So I'm going to fold it in half and just give myself the smallest little snip top and bottom. There we go. Open that one up and find my ruler, and I want to measure down 2 inches from that center top mark. Grab my pocket, fold it in half, give it a little crease so I know where the center of that is, and then line it up along that 2-inch line. Grab some pins, whack them in, just a couple to hold it in place. Maybe one more down here, just like that. And then when we take it over to your sewing machine, we're going to just pin our slip pocket first, but then we'll take it over and we'll stitch around just that curved edge, remembering to leave that top bit open for our pocket. So pop that to the side, grab one of my lining pieces, and same thing. I can actually see where my center marks are because it's still got that fold in it. But if you can't, go ahead and snip. Then I'm going to put a little crease in my pocket as well. And same thing, except this time I'm going to measure down 3 inches and then pop my slip pocket there and whack some pins in to hold that in place. Now the reason this one's sitting a little bit lower is because A, it's smaller, but also we want room for our magnetic clasp, but that's got to go on in a minute as well. So same thing, we're going to just stitch down those 3 sides, leaving the top open. So let's take these 2 pieces over to the sewing machine and stitch these guys on at around, probably around 1/4 inch seam allowance. This one is a little bit thick, so we don't want to go too close, like 1/8 inch, because it might be a little bit hard for you to stay on that pocket. But if you can, go at 1/8 inch. If not, because of the bulk, then go 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch on that one. But we'll go over that again at the sewing machine. Okay, so you might notice that I've changed out my presser foot to this one. It's just to help me on those bulky corners. If you don't have one like this, don't worry about it, it's fine. Okay, so, and I've just let my dog Elvis inside, so any bodily noises are the dog. Don't blame me. So I've kept my stitch length at around that 4.5, and I'm going to back stitch well at that corner, because our pocket is going to have some pulling and pushing on it, and just nice and slow around these curves all the way around. So if you're just using an all-purpose foot, that's fine. I just had that one there and thought it would just make this bulk a little bit easier. All the way around. And again, remember to back stitch well at this corner so that it's nice and strong. Let's do our slip pocket. Okay, so same thing, just remembering to back stitch really well on this side. And nice and slow, and I'm at about 1/8 inch. So same thing, we're going to do what we did before on this corner. I'm going to angle, drop 1 stitch, and then go the rest of the way around. Up to this corner, angle, drop 1 stitch, and then the rest of the way around. It'll just help those corners lay that little bit flatter, and then back stitch really well. Done. There we go. There's our pockets all nicely sewn on. Now we're going to look at doing our zippered pocket. So I've got my zipper pocket here, my exterior piece, my tape, and my zipper, ruler, scissors, and a pen. So what we're going to do is work on this. So I'm just going to pop that to the side for a little mini. So I'm going to find the top center of my zipper pocket piece. Give myself a little snip. Then I'm going to place it wrong sides up. Now I'm going to measure down from that center mark 1.5 inches. And then I'm going to draw a 6-inch line. Just like that. Then I'm going to measure down 1/2 inch from there and do another 6-inch line, and that line will be centered, of course. So 3 inches each of that center mark. Just like that. Then I'm going to measure up 1/4 inch from that bottom and give myself another line. And then I have my zipper box. So I'm going to draw myself my little triangles in from each corner. So that's fine, just a freehand. Okay, then I'm going to grab my exterior piece. So I've gone ahead and found my center mark on that bit. And then I'm going to measure down from that center 1 inch. Then I'm going to grab my zipper pocket piece and place them right sides together and line up those center marks just like that. And then I'm going to whack some pins in there. Then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we are going to stitch around this box. And that will be our zipper, where our zipper goes. So we're going to go over and just sew around this box at a nice short 3.5, 3 mil stitch length. Okay, so remember to shorten your stitch length to around a 3 or a 3.5. And I'm going to start at one of these top corners and I'm going to back stitch. And then slowly down to this bottom corner and pivot. I'm not going to do that angle thing this time with my zipper box. Pins in the way. And around. Pivot. Then I'm going to back stitch. What we're going to do now is open up this pocket. So I'm going to poke my seam ripper through those layers on that middle line we created and then just make a slit very carefully right up to the end, being careful not to go all the way to those stitches. That's what these little triangle lines are for. Then we're going to use our scissors and just snip away those little triangle lines. Again, being really careful not to hit the stitches. And then up the other side. The seam ripper really is the easiest way to do this. All the way up to the end. And then those corner bits, being really careful not to hit those stitches. Just like that. Then we're going to turn this out and we are going to iron that nice and flat. Okay, so I'm going to pull that pocket through and just roll that seam in my fingers get it sitting where I want it to, and just give it a bit of an iron just to make it sit nicely. Oh, hot, who would have guessed? I really should turn this down. And create that nice opening for us. Now on the back it will bunch up a little bit in those corners. Just pull it out the best you can, and if you need to, turn it back in the other way and just snip a little bit closer to those stitches if it's still bulking up too much after you iron it. Okay, then we're going to grab our double-sided tape and our zipper. Now, what I'm going to do is lay some double-sided tape along the top and bottom of my zipper. Now, this is just going to help hold it in place for me while I sew it. If you don't have double-sided tape, you can just use pins to hold it in place. So you'll just do exactly the same thing, just without the tape, and you'll just whack some pins in. But I just find this is a lot easier. So I'm going to pull that zipper head down out of the way a little bit, and then simply place my zipper underneath my zipper pocket and push it down. So just make sure that you have enough tape on either side so that you're going to catch it all, and that's why we cut the tape quite a bit longer than our pocket to give us enough room to work with. So let's take this over to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch around here at about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I've swapped back over to a zipper foot just so I can get nice and close to that edge, so I do have that 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm changing my stitch length up to about a 4.5. I just want a couple of back stitches there so I don't have a big line. And I've moved my zipper head down out of the way. And once I get a little bit further down, I will lift my presser foot and close that zipper back up. Lift, turn, very slowly over those teeth. So I haven't used this zipper tape before, so I'm not sure what it's like. Down the other side. When I get down here, I'll move that zipper head out of my way again. I want to be very careful not to get my needle anywhere near that. You do not want to be hitting metal. And back up again and back down. Now, if you don't have a button like mine, but you want to go one stitch at a time, just use your flywheel. And just remember to always just turn your flywheel forwards. There we go, there's our zipper in. Now let's cut this zipper tape down along the sides, get rid of all these excess bits that we don't need. It's pretty short on that end, so I think I'm good. Cool. Okay, now we're just going to grab our iron again. So we're going to fold this up in half, and we're going to iron it nicely in place so it stays where we want it to be. And then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew all 3 sides down. Now, when we do it, obviously, if we just pop it under the machine and we sew, then we're going to be sewing through our bag exterior as well. So what we want to do is start on a corner, and we're going to lift our pocket and fold our bag up and under the way, out of the way. And then we're going to sew up one of the sides. And then we are going to fold down the top, go across the top, and then we are going to fold in the other side and go down that side. So we're going to be really careful at the machine that we're not catching any of our exterior bag. So I'll just whack some clips on there and we'll get that bit done. I'm going to shorten my stitch length back to that 3.5. I'm going to fold the first side of my bag up and out of the way. And I'm going to be sewing at around 1/4 inch seam allowance. And back stitch. Up to the top. Turn and then fold that top piece down out of the way. And then turn my side piece out of the way. And there is our zipper pocket all done. Good job. There's our zipper pocket all done. Looks good. Okay, now we're going to take care of these corners. So we're going to flip our bag over and we're going to do this on all of our pieces. So with these pleats, I'm going to fold my fabric up on that line, on that middle line. And just fold that corner in. So I'm ironing on that middle line and then I have a line on either side. I'm just going to whack a pin in there. Now I'm going to go around all 4 pieces and I'm going to iron them flat like that and pin them in place. And then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we are simply going to stitch down along that line on all of our pieces. So get all those ironed into place and I will see you over at the sewing machine for that bit, and that will give our bag some shape. So I've got my stitch length at around that 3.5 mark. I'm going to back stitch really well because these are going to have a lot of weight on them with all the contents in our bag. So back stitch at the top and bottom, and I'm just going to do all of those pleats exactly the same as that. So there's what our pieces should be looking like with those pleats done along the bottom. Now I'm going to pop my exterior pieces to the side and I'm going to grab my lining pieces. And I'm also going to grab my magnetic clasp, a pen, my seam ripper and a ruler. So I'm going to find the top center of my lining piece, give myself a little clip and place it right sides down. Going to grab my ruler and measure down 1.5 inches from that center mark. I'm going to give myself a little circle at that 1.5 inch mark and then pop my backing piece over the top of that circle. And then I'm going to colour in those side pieces where my prongs will go. Grab my seam ripper and I know exactly where to cut and how far up. Being very careful not to go too far. This is a new seam ripper, so it's a bit sharp. Grab one of my prongy bits, pop it through the front and my backing piece on the back. That easy. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other piece with my other magnetic end. And then I'm just going to find a bit of leftover interfacing that I've got laying on the floor somewhere. And I'm just going to iron it over the top just to stop that rubbing. But you don't need to see me do that. You can do that on your own, I'm sure. So if you haven't used magnetic clasps before, it's that easy. And it really does just take 2 seconds to do. And it just adds so much more to your bag having that hardware on there. So I'll just pop the other one on while I yak because it will take 2 seconds. 1.5 inches down. Colour in those side bits. So I know that that is going to line up with the other one. Very carefully with my seam ripper. Prongs through that hole. Middle bit on the back. And open it up. Too easy. Now we're going to look at putting our pieces together. So I'm going to have my 2 exterior pieces and I'm going to lay them right sides together. Just like that. Then I'm going to match up my pleat lines and have one seam going that way and one seam going that way and clip them together. Same thing on this one. One seam going that way and one seam going that way with the actual stitch line laying together. And then I'm just going to whack some more clips all the way around, and then I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch it together at about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. Now around the outside, I'm not going to do this bit. Then I'm going to do exactly the same thing to my lining piece, lay them together. I've matched up the seams and I've clipped it together. But on my lining piece, I'm leaving myself a turnout hole. It's 6 inches long. So I'm not going to sew that piece. I'm just going to come down the sides and then backstitch really well here. So let's take these both over to the sewing machine and do them together. So I've still got my stitch length on 3.5 and I'm going to start down at my turnout hole. I'm going to give myself 3/8 of an inch seam allowance to work with. And I'm going to hold this seam flat as I go up over those seams. And then work my way up to the top of that handle. Now if your handles don't exactly match up when you get there, don't worry about it. We can just trim them down, it's no big deal. And backstitch really well. Be careful of that seam. And then same thing on the exterior piece, except this time I'm going to go all the way around. I'm still going to start along the bottom though, just in case my bag sort of shifts around on me a little bit. So it'll still sort of line up on either end rather than being pushed all in one direction. So this little bit thicker bit here, starting at the middle and just exactly the same thing. Just being careful with those seams. And we'll get this done and I'll see you back over at the table. There we go, there's our 2 pieces. Now what we're going to do is just clip around these curves a little bit, just to make it easier and make our bag sit better when we turn it out. So, and trim down a little bit wherever you need to. So just be really careful just to clip up to the stitch line, but don't hit that stitch line. You don't want to pop your stitches. So a little bit on the lining as well, just to help those curves sit a bit nicer. Get rid of some of that bulk. Don't take off too much bulk at the bottom of your lining piece, because we need to still be able to sew up that hole and have enough fabric there to work with. Cool. Okay, let's turn the exterior piece out the right way and have a look at this. Poke out those pleats and those bottom corners really well. Nice. There we go. We can really see it start to take shape now. That looks great. Now we're going to pop this one in this one. So our pieces are going to be right sides together. So the exterior of my exterior piece is right sides together with the exterior of my lining piece. There we go. Looking good. Now we are going to grab a heap of clips. Okay, we're going to line up our center points on our lining and exterior piece and give them a clip, and then start working out in either direction and just clipping our two pieces together. Lining up our tops. And then my other side. Just like that. And then we're going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. But on this side, we are going to leave ourselves 3 inches. So I'm just going to use my mat to measure. 3 inches where we are not going to stitch that together. So give yourself a really good mark so you don't forget. And then we are just going to find our centers again and clip around. So I'm going to give myself a mark on both sides of my fabric so that depending on what side at the sewing machine I have it up, I don't forget, because I am terrible for forgetting and closing up my turnout hole accidentally. So finish clipping that around, and then we're going to take it over to the machine and we are going to sew those clipped edges together at the same seam allowance as we did before. So that 3/8 of an inch. And we are pretty close. This is like the final stages. So get this done and I'll see you over at the sewing machine in a moment. So I'm going to start at one of the edges where I've got it clipped all the way around. And I'm going to backstitch really well. And like I said, we're at about that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Lay it flat, and I'm just going to be careful going around my curved edges. Sorry if the bag's all in the camera. And just go all the way around. Just being careful that you can feel where everything is and you're not going up around that other side. You're not catching the other side of your bag in those stitches. Back stitch. And then the other side, remembering to leave that turnout hole or turnout end, or not sew the ends. So we're going to leave that top 3 inches and just back stitch really well. to this side, getting close to that mark. So I'll backstitch. Done. Okay, there's our pieces all sewn together. Now what I'm going to do is stuff these handles down into themselves a little bit, just to make it a bit easier when I turn this thing out, so that I can grab them a little bit easier. And then I'm going to stick my hand up through that turnout hole and grab my exterior piece and carefully pull that out. So don't want to rip anything and have to go back and fix it at this stage. But if you do hear any tears, turn it back out the other way, find where it's ripped and stitch it up. Nice. This is looking good. Now, if you're wondering where I got this fabric, don't think I mentioned it at the beginning. I got it from Spotlight. So I'm in Australia. I think Spotlight is in Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, maybe Indonesia. And this is a fairly new one. So it's really nice. Okay. This is what it looks like. Now we need to sort out this turnout hole. So I'm going to grab my ironing mat and just iron this bottom piece out a little bit and fold in these sides so that I can take it back over to the machine and just stitch up that turnout hole, and then we'll have a look at the straps. So I'll fold this in just like that. I'll clip along. If I stick my fingers in and pull it like that, it'll all sort of fit where I want it to go. I'll iron that flat, whack some clips on. We'll take it back over to the machine and stitch that closed. So my stitch length is still nice and short, around that 3.5 mark. And when you do this, just make sure that you are catching both sides of that fabric, because you don't want a hole in the bottom of your bag, and backstitch really well. And backstitch well. There we go. Okay, get rid of any loose threads and make sure you cut your fabric on both sides. Looking good. Love it. All right, now we're just going to stuff that lining down into our bag and give it all a bit of a hit with the iron. It is such a great shape bag and so easy to make. And if you make a couple of them, like the first time you make a bag, it's going to take you some time, no matter what. It's just figuring it out and, and getting used to the pattern and what you have to do and everything else. But if you make a bag a few times, like if you want to sell them at markets or make them as Christmas gifts or whatever, then you will just get quicker and quicker as you go. So if it took you a little while, if this is one of the first bags you've made and it took you a little while, don't be discouraged, really, because everything is just practice. Practice, practice, patience and perseverance. Okay, there we go. Love it. Right. Now, these handles. So what we're going to do is open them up and then place them right sides together. So pretty fabric to pretty fabric. And then join up those seams. So you'll see it looks like I've got it twisted almost. Grab some clips. Okay. So I'm going to match up those seams and clip along that top edge there. And then I'm just going to take it over to the machine and I'm only going to worry about that top edge. Just sewing along, catching both sides all the way across, nice and neat. So the more clips, the better here. And then we'll worry about the side piece in a moment once we've got that flipped out. So let's go over and sew that bit. Okay, so I'm going to go about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and I've still got my stitch length nice and short at that between 3 and 3.5. And I'm going to backstitch really well because there's going to be a lot of weight on this point and it's got a seam there, so we want to make sure that's not going to pop open on us. And then over this lining bit, so I'm going to hold those little seams flat as I go so I don't have any bunching. I'm just making sure that I'm catching both sides. And backstitch. Now I'm actually going to go over those stitches again just to reinforce it. And before I go back over to the table, I'm also going to check my bobbin, because in a moment we're going to iron that hole closed that we've got left, and then we're going to top stitch all around that inside bit. So make sure now that your bobbin is loaded up so you're not playing bobbin chicken. Okay, there we go. Looking good. Okay, now I'm just going to give it another hit with the iron. So just going to do the same thing. I'm going to sort of pull and fold those sides in where I want them to sit. Give it a hit with the iron and whack some clips on. And I'm going to clip all the way around, and I'm going to, oh, hot. Oh, hot. There's an iron. Okay, so I've got that hole clipped up. Then I'm just going to clip all the way around that edge. Just going to roll that seam out with my fingers, clip all the way around, and then give this side a little iron and clip that all the way around. And then I will see you over at the machine, and we are going to top stitch from the exterior side. So we want this side up, and we are going to top stitch around that hole and around that hole. Looking good. So make sure your bobbin is full. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. Okay, I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to about 4.5 because I'm top stitching. And I've got my bag exterior side up. So I might need my hump jump because this seam is pretty decent. And backstitch a little bit, pop my hump jump under there, and off I go. So at about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, so nice and close to the edge. So I've still got my zipper foot in there. But you might have to get creative with how you turn this around. If you're working on a domestic machine, then you're going to be finding it a little bit easier than me being on a flatbed machine, because you'll be able to wrap your bag, sorry, you've just got bag in the camera, you'll be able to wrap that bag around your free arm. And I've got a domestic machine I could have used. I just really like using this one. That sometimes I even forget. I forget it's there. It's in one of those tables that folds down. You can put the machine on, then push it down into the table. Terrible. All the way back up around to the top, and just be really careful that you're not catching the other side of your bag accidentally anywhere in there. There we go, that's one side. And now I'll do the other. So again, my stitch length is that nice 4.5. starting up at that seam, and that's where my hole is as well. So I'm gonna break all my clips is what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna be very careful that I'm catching both sides of that hole when I come around to it on the other side. It would have been good for me to start at that hole, but it's just the way the bag is and the way my camera is, it's just easier to do it this way. Just experimenting with a different tripod for that camera in the hopes that you can see a little bit better. So let me know what you think in the comments. It's a little bit hard not to get my hands and whatever I'm working on in the way. All right, so I'm coming up to where that hole was. So I'm going to slow down, pay a little bit more attention, and just make sure that I'm grabbing both sides of that fabric, so I don't want to have to come back and do it again. There we go. There we go, all top stitched down, and I've cut away my loose threads and given it a bit of an iron into shape, and I am just loving this bag. I hope you had fun making it, and I hope you were successful. If you have any questions at all, or if you're unsure about anything at all, then feel free to leave me a comment and I will get back to you. I want you to succeed. Otherwise, please give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Give me that YouTube love. Help me get the YouTube algorithms going in the YouTube ether. It's not easy. And I will see you next time. And remember, it is only fabric. You can always buy more. Okay, bye peeps. Bugger.